My wife's voice came through the phone like a siren in a snowstorm. Why do you always leave our son with your sister? I was standing in the hallway of our little split level in Cedar Rapids, one hand on the wall for balance, staring at my boy's bedroom door like it might swing open and prove I'd lost my mind. What I said too loud like volume could fix it. Linda, Ethan is sleeping at home. I put him to bed 10 minutes ago. Silence. Then her voice dropped into something I'd never heard from her in 22 years of marriage, small, shaky. Mark, what did you just say? My stomach went cold like I'd swallowed river water. I said our son is here. I didn't wait. I moved bare feet on the carpet runner, the house dim except for the kitchen nightlight and the blue glow of the TV we left on low. He's in his room. I can... No. Her breath hitched. In the background, I heard something metallic, maybe a car door, maybe the automatic doors at the hospital. I saw him. I saw Ethan at Carol's. He ran inside. Carol grabbed his hand. I stopped outside Ethan's door, the phone sweating against my palm. In my other hand, I still had the little brass key for the deadbolt because I'd just done my habit lock the front door, check the back slider, check the garage door. Twice. I always did it twice. My old man used to say a man's job is to keep his family safe. It sounded simple when you're a kid. It sounded like a cruel joke now. Linda, I said carefully, listen to me. I'm opening his door. I turned the knob. The door drifted open with that soft creak it always made, because I'd been meaning to fix it since 2019 and never did. The room was dark except for the little plug-in nightlight shaped like a hockey puck, because Ethan was obsessed with the Rough Riders, even though he could barely skate. The air smelled faintly of kid shampoo and those cheap fruit snacks he tried to smuggle into bed. In the dim I could see him, a lump under the quilt. One sneaker kicked off at the foot of the bed. His brown hair spilled over the pillow. His chest rose and fell steady the way it does when you've still got the kind of trust adults spend the rest of their lives trying to earn back. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. He's here, I whispered. I'm looking at him. Linda made a noise like she'd been punched. That's impossible. A cold chill ran down my spine, not the movie kind, real physical, like the heat had shut off and the Iowa winter had climbed inside my skin. Where are you? I asked. At St. Luke's, she said, but it came too fast like a reflex. I am in the parking lot. I stepped out. You're on shift, I said. You said you were on a late shift. Another pause. Mark, don't do that. Not right now. That right there, those 5 words, was the first crack I could hear. Linda was an ER nurse. She could keep calm while a grown man bled on a linoleum floor. She could soothe a scared kid with a broken arm. She didn't say, don't do that unless she was cornered. Tell me exactly what happened, I said. She swallowed and I heard the wind whip through her end of the call and traffic cars sloshing through slush on Collins Road. I got off early, she admitted. We were staffed up. I drove past Carol's because I was thinking about Ethan's school pictures, and I forgot to ask you where you put the order form. I saw Carol's porch light on. I saw a boy, Mark. It was Ethan. Same jacket, same height. He ran up the steps and Carol grabbed his hand and pulled him inside like she was in a hurry. My eyes dropped to the chair in Ethan's room. His winter coat was there navy with a bright orange zipper slung over the back like a tired person. The sleeves were damp at the cuffs from him making snowballs yesterday. I could see the smear of dirt on the elbow where he'd fallen. That coat was not on another kid tonight. It was right here. There's his coat, I said, right in front of me. I'm not lying, Linda snapped, and then softer, I'm not. I know what I saw. I stared at my son, and for a second, the whole world narrowed to that steady little breathing sound. I thought about the last time I'd heard my own breath go ragged years ago after the miscarriage, when Linda cried into my shoulder and kept saying, I'm sorry, like it was her fault biology had a cruel sense of humor. I had promised her then, holding her in our kitchen while the coffee maker clicked off behind us, that we were still a family, that nothing could break us. Families don't usually break with a bang. They break with confusion, with little gaps in the story that get wider every time someone insists they're fine. I'm going to Carol's, I said. No, Linda said quick. Don't do anything. Just wait until I get home. Why? I asked. If you saw Ethan there and Ethan is here, what exactly am I supposed to do? Sit in my living room and pretend that doesn't mean something? Linda's breath came fast. Mark, I don't know. I don't know what it means. I felt sick, like my body knew before my brain caught up. I had to call you. I walked out of Ethan's room and pulled the door nearly closed, leaving it cracked the way I always did. My feet padded down the hall. In the kitchen, the clock over the stove read 9:26. The dishwasher hummed. Somewhere outside, a plow scraped past on our street with that grinding, heavy sound that usually made me feel safe, like the world was being taken care of. Tonight, it sounded like a warning. Okay, I said, trying to keep my voice steady for her and for me. Stay where you are. I'm going to call Carol. Don't, Linda whispered again, and I could hear tears now, which was almost worse than yelling. If I'm wrong. If you're wrong, I said, then I'll apologize to my sister and we'll laugh about it next Thanksgiving. But if you're not wrong, I didn't finish. I didn't need to. The rest sat between us like a third person on the line. I hit Carol's contact and put Linda on speaker in the kitchen because my hands had started to shake and I needed both of them. One hand braced on the counter, the other rubbed my thumb over the edge of the key like it could ground me. It rang twice. Carol answered on the third ring, breathy, like she'd been moving around. Mark, everything okay? Carol, I said, and my voice sounded older than it had this morning. Where are you right now? In my kitchen, she said. Why? Is Ethan with you? What Carol sounded genuinely startled. No! What are you talking about? I looked down the hall toward Ethan's room as if he might suddenly be gone, and I'd be the fool. Linda says she saw him at your house. There was a pause long enough that I could hear Carol's refrigerator kick on. Then quieter, Linda's with you. She's on the line, I said. Linda's voice came thin through the speaker. Carol, I saw a boy. I swear I did. I thought it was Ethan. Carol exhaled hard. Honey, I haven't seen Ethan in weeks. Not since the school fundraiser. I've been at work and home. I was just washing dishes. Then who was it, Linda said almost to herself. Carol didn't answer right away. Mark, she said finally, careful, you need to come over. Why, my throat tightened. Carol's voice dropped, and for the first time all night, the hair on my arms lifted like static. Because about 20 minutes ago, she said someone knocked on my back door. A kid. And when I opened it, he asked for you. My grip tightened on the key until it bit into my skin. A kid asked for me. Yes, Carol said. And Mark? He looked an awful lot like Ethan. I felt the world tilt. The dishwasher kept humming. The clock kept ticking. My son kept sleeping in the next room, innocent and small. And somewhere across town, maybe closer, there was another boy who looked like my boy asking for me by name. I didn't let myself think on the drive over. Thinking would have turned into panic, and panic gets you killed in Iowa winters. You drive steady, you watch the road, and you deal with what's in front of you. Carol lived 10 minutes away over by the older part of town, where the trees were tall and the houses all looked like they'd been built by men who planned to stay. The streets were half-plowed ridges of gray snow piled along the curbs like dirty secrets. My tires crunched and slid, and every red light felt personal. Linda stayed on the phone until I pulled up, then went quiet. I'm heading home, she said. Please, Mark, don't jump to conclusions. I didn't answer. I parked under Carol's bare maple tree, its branches clacking together in the wind like old bones. Her porch light was on, casting a yellow circle on the snow. No kid in sight. Carol opened the door before I knocked. She was still in her scrub's hair, pulled back dish towel over one shoulder. Her eyes were wide. Where is he? I asked. Inside, she said. But Mark. I stepped past her into the warm smell of soap and boiled pasta. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The living room was empty. The kitchen table had a half-dried ring from a mug. Carol, I said, where's the kid? She pointed down the hall. Bathroom. He said he needed the toilet. I took 2 steps and stopped myself. I don't know why habit, maybe. That same instinct that made me check locks twice. I forced myself to slow down. I didn't want to scare a kid who wasn't mine, or worse, wasn't supposed to exist. I knocked once on the bathroom door. Hey, buddy. Silence, then the toilet flushed. The door cracked open. A boy stood there, maybe 8 or 9. Same height as Ethan. Same messy brown hair that never stayed combed. He wore a red sweatshirt and jeans too short at the ankles. But his eyes were different, lighter, and there was a thin white scar on his chin like he'd fallen off a bike once and learned the hard way. He looked at me like he knew me. You're Mark, he said. My mouth went dry. Yeah, I managed. Who are you? He hesitated, then shrugged. I'm just supposed to wait here. For who? I asked. He glanced past me toward Carol like he was checking the room. For my mom. Carol made a strangled sound. Your mom? The boy nodded. She said if anyone asked, I was Ethan. The room went quiet in a way that hurt. Even the pipes seemed to stop rattling. I crouched down so we were eye level. My knees creaked like they always did in the cold. What's your name, son? He hesitated again. Noah. That name hit me like a punch to the ribs. I'd heard it before. Years ago, once or twice. From Linda in passing. A guy at work named Noah. Noah covered my shift. Noah's kid has the flu. Where's your mom, Noah? I asked. He swallowed. She said she had to do something first. She said you'd help. Behind me, Carol whispered, Mark. I think you should call Linda. I didn't move. I couldn't take my eyes off the boy. Same nose as Ethan, same cowlick at the crown, different eyes, different chin, close enough to break a man. What's your mom's name? I asked gently. He shook his head. I'm not supposed to say. I stood up slowly. My legs felt hollow. Carol, I said, can you make him some cocoa with marshmallows? She nodded, already moving like she understood this was a kindness we both needed. I stepped into the front room and pulled my phone out. My hands were steadier than I expected. Maybe shock does that, wraps you in cotton so you don't scream. I didn't call Linda. I called my sister-in-law's landline because if there was one thing I'd learned after 56 years, it was that cell phones lie. Records don't. While it rang, my eyes drifted to Carol's bulletin board. Church bake sale flyer, VFW fish fry announcement, a school calendar, normal life, the kind that shatters quietly. Linda answered on the second ring. Mark. There's a boy here, I said, at Carol's. His name is Noah. Silence, long, heavy. You said you were coming home, I added. I am, she said finally. Her voice was controlled now, flat, like she'd put her nurse face back on. I can explain. When I asked, when I get there, she said, please don't do this in front of a child. I almost laughed, almost. Who is he? I asked. He's not what you think, she said too quickly. That's funny, I said, because right now he's exactly what I think. She inhaled, exhaled. I didn't plan for this to happen like this. Nothing ever does, I said and hung up. Carol came back with 2 mugs of cocoa, steam curling up like ghosts. Noah sat at the table, swinging his legs, staring into the chocolate, like it might give him answers. I watched him take a sip and get a marshmallow mustache, and something inside me cracked, not rage, not yet, but grief. The quiet kind. The kind you feel when you realize a story you believed for decades was missing whole chapters. I stepped outside onto Carol's porch. The cold slapped my face awake. I leaned against the railing and breathed until the fog in my head cleared enough to think straight. Linda had been careful. That much was obvious. Careful people don't make big mistakes. They make small ones. They get sloppy only when they think the system is under control. I pulled up our credit union app. I'd always handled the bills. Linda said numbers made her anxious. Over the years, that habit had turned into my shield. I scrolled back 6 months, then 9, then a year. There they were, small transfers spaced out just enough to look like groceries or gas. $120, $200, $85, always to the same account, a name I didn't recognize. I tapped into the phone records next. The number labeled Church Committee, calls at odd hours, short, frequent. Inside, I heard Carol laughing softly at something Noah said. The sound twisted my chest. I thought about Ethan asleep at home, about how I'd tucked him in promised pancakes in the morning, about how close I'd come to losing him without ever knowing it. A man can yell, a man can cry, a man can confront, or a man can wait. I went back inside, smiled at Noah and said, finish your cocoa, okay, your mom will be here soon. He nodded, trusting, too trusting. I turned to Carol. I'm taking him home with me, I said, just for the night. Is that wise? She asked. I don't know, I said honestly, but leaving him alone isn't. She nodded, eyes soft. Call me if you need anything. On the drive back, Noah stared out the window. You have a son, he said. I do, I said. Is he nice? Noah asked. He is, I said. He's the best thing that ever happened to me. Noah was quiet for a moment. My mom says dads don't always stay. I gripped the wheel a little tighter. Some of us do, I said. When we pulled into my driveway, Linda's car wasn't there yet. The house looked the same as it always had. Safe, ordinary, lying. I ushered Noah inside, set him up on the couch with a blanket, and turned on the TV low. I checked the locks, twice. As I walked past the hallway, I glanced into Ethan's room. Still sleeping? Still mine. That's when I understood the truth under the truth. Linda hadn't just lied. She'd built a second life so carefully, she forgot which child belonged to which house. And that kind of mistake doesn't get fixed with a conversation. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I sat in the recliner in the living room with one eye on the hallway and one ear tuned to every sound the house made. The furnace kicked on and off. The old clock above the TV ticked too loud. Outside, the wind pushed snow against the siding in soft, steady waves. Noah fell asleep on the couch around midnight, curled under one of Ethan's old fleece blankets. I watched his chest rise and fall and felt something I didn't want to name. He was just a kid. None of this mess belonged to him. Linda came home at 2:17 a.m. I know because I checked the clock when the garage door rattled open. She moved quietly, shoes off, coat hung with care. Too much care. Like someone who didn't want to wake the truth. She froze when she saw Noah on the couch. For a moment, the nurse mask slipped. Her mouth opened. Her hand went to her chest. Then it was back, composed, controlled, professional. "You shouldn't have brought him here," she said. "You shouldn't have brought him into our lives," I replied. We stood there in the half-light, two people who knew each other's habits until finally out of moves. Noah stirred but didn't wake. "We'll talk in the morning," Linda said softly. "No," I said just as softly. "We'll talk when you're ready to tell the truth." She looked at Ethan's closed bedroom door, then back at me. "I didn't mean for you to find out this way." "That's usually how it goes," I said. She didn't argue. She just went upstairs and closed the bedroom door behind her. Morning came gray and cold. I made pancakes because routine keeps kids steady. Ethan woke up first, hair wild, smiling. Noah followed a few minutes later, rubbing his eyes, unsure. The boys stood there side by side in the kitchen and my heart stuttered. Same height, same crooked grin, same age near enough. But when you looked longer, really looked, the differences stood out. Noah's eyes were hazel, not brown. His ears stuck out just a bit more, and that faint scar on his chin caught the light. Linda watched from the doorway, arms crossed tight like she was holding herself together. "We're going to school," she said. "I'll take Noah." "No," I said, calm, firm. "You're taking Ethan. I'll handle Noah." Her jaw clenched. "Mark." I said no. For the first time, she looked scared of me. Not because I was angry, because I wasn't. After they left, I drove Noah to a small elementary school on the other side of town. I didn't ask questions. I listened. Kids tell the truth sideways. "My mom says you're nice," Noah said as I pulled up. "She says you don't yell." "I try not to," I said. "She says you don't know about us." I parked, turned to him. "Who's this Noah?" He frowned, thinking. "Me and Derek." The name landed heavy and familiar. Derek Malloy. I'd worked with him years ago at a supply conference in Davenport. Loud laugh, big handshake, always talking about his situation. Divorced, one kid, hard luck story. I watched Noah walk into the school and felt the anger finally start to burn slow and steady. I didn't confront Linda that day, or the next. I did what men my age know how to do when something's broken, but still moving, I observed. I followed patterns. Linda's church volunteering lined up perfectly with nights Derek's truck was parked near the river rentals. The credit union transfers matched grocery receipts from a store I never shopped at. Hospital billing statements showed pediatric charges that weren't Ethan's. One afternoon, I followed Linda. I parked 2 blocks away and walked the rest collar up, hands in pockets like I belonged there. The river smelled cold and metallic. Gulls cried overhead. I saw her through the window first, laughing, a laugh I hadn't heard at home in years. Then I saw Noah, then Derek. Derek leaned down and kissed Linda's forehead. She rested her head on his shoulder like it was the most natural thing in the world. I stood there longer than I should have. Noah ran across the room and Derek scooped him up. The boy wrapped his arms around Derek's neck, careless and full of trust. That's when I noticed it. The way Derek held him, familiar, practiced. This wasn't a secret fling. This was a family. I stepped back, heart pounding, and bumped into a trash bin. It tipped. Cans clattered loud in the quiet afternoon. Linda's head snapped up. I ducked behind a parked car, my breath loud in my ears, feeling ridiculous and old and furious all at once. A lousy detective in a cheap old noir movie. When I got home, Linda was already there. She watched me from the kitchen, eyes sharp. "Where were you?" she asked. "At Casey's," I said easily. "Grabbed coffee." She searched my face. I let her. Finally, she nodded. "You look tired." "So do you," I said. That night, I sat at the dining table long after everyone was asleep, papers spread out. Statements, dates, times, a manila folder I'd bought at Hy-Vee. I didn't feel rage anymore. I felt resolve. I wasn't going to blow this up in the driveway or shout in front of kids who didn't ask for any of it. I was going to make sure the truth stood up in daylight. I closed the folder and whispered into the quiet house, "I see you now." I learned how to move quietly after that. Not sneaking, just not announcing myself. Men my age get invisible when we want to. We go to work. We pay bills. We listen more than we talk. People mistake that for weakness. It isn't. Friday night at the VFW Post off First Avenue was fish fry night, same as it had been for as long as I could remember. The place smelled like hot oil lemon wedges and old wood soaked in decades of stories. Flags on the wall, a few widows at the corner table, guys my age complaining about their knees and the price of beef. I went because that's where men talk when they don't know how to say what they're feeling. I sat with Ron Keegan, divorced twice, honest about it, and Walt Jennings, who'd buried his wife 3 winters back and still wore his ring. We talked about nothing until Ron looked at me and said, "You look like a man counting his words." I shrugged, just tired. Walt sipped his beer. Tired men make mistakes. Quiet men don't. I nodded. That was it. That was the advice. I didn't tell them anything else. Instead, I went home and worked. I kept my routine so Linda wouldn't sense a shift. I checked the locks twice every night. I made coffee in the morning. I packed Ethan's lunch and asked about spelling tests and hockey practice. Inside, though, I was building a timeline. I documented everything, dates, amounts, locations. I didn't hack. I didn't spy illegally. I stayed inside the lines because I wanted this to hold up when it mattered. The credit union statements told a clean story if you knew how to read it. Transfers to the same account every month. Pediatric co-pays that didn't match Ethan's doctor. Grocery purchases in neighborhoods Linda never shopped in. I saved screenshots, printed copies, labeled folders. One night I noticed Linda pause in the doorway while I was on the laptop. "What are you working on?" she asked casual. "Budget," I said. "Property taxes went up." She smiled, relieved. "I knew you'd handle it." That word "handle" sat wrong, like she thought I was a tool, not a man. The next step was harder. I met with a family law attorney on a Tuesday afternoon under the pretense of a consultation. Her name was Janice Keller, late 50s, sharp eyes, voice like gravel, and patience. Her office overlooked the courthouse parking lot. She didn't interrupt. She let me talk. When I finished, she leaned back and said, "You've done the right thing so far. You didn't confront. You didn't escalate. You documented." "What happens next?" I asked. She folded her hands. "Now we let her lie again. On record." I swallowed. "In front of the kids." "No," Janice said firmly. "Never in front of the kids. We do this clean." We planned mediation, marriage counseling as a cover. Linda had suggested it herself once months ago, like a safety valve she never thought we'd use. When I brought it up again, she agreed too quickly. "Maybe it's time," she said, "for us." I watched her face while she said it. There was hope there, but not for us. Hope that she could steer this back into something manageable. That night, she reached for my hand in bed. I let her. That was the hardest part. Not the anger, not the fear, the waiting. A week before mediation, she slipped. She came home flustered, phone buzzing nonstop. She forgot to lock the bathroom door. I didn't mean to hear, but the house carries sound. "He's asking questions," she whispered. "No, I told you don't show up. I'll handle Mark." I stood in the hallway staring at the same spot on the wall where Ethan had once marked his height in pencil. Handle. At mediation, the room was neutral. Beige walls, water glasses, a box of tissues. No one ever wants to be the first to touch. Linda sat across from me, composed, legs crossed. Derek wasn't there yet. He thought he wouldn't need to be. Janice sat at my side. Linda had her own attorney, younger, confident. The mediator asked simple questions. Linda answered smoothly. Too smoothly. When the subject of finances came up, Linda said, "There's nothing unusual. We've always shared expenses." Janice slid a document across the table. "Then you won't mind explaining these transfers," she said. Linda's eyes flicked down. just for a second. That second was everything. The mediator asked about the child. There is no other child, Linda said. Mark is confused. Janice nodded and opened the folder. Photos, statements, dates. Linda's composure cracked, not shattered, but enough. Derek was called in. He arrived late, smelling like cold air and confidence. When Janice asked him how long he'd known Linda, he answered too fast. When she asked about Noah, he hesitated. The room shifted. You could feel it. I finally spoke. I didn't come here to yell, I said. I came here to tell the truth. Linda looked at me, really looked at me for the first time in months. How long, she whispered. Since the night you forgot where our son sleeps, I said. She closed her eyes. By the time it was over, the story was clear. Custody arrangements, financial accountability, boundaries put in writing. No shouting, no slammed doors. Just consequences. That evening, I took Ethan for a walk by the river. The air was sharp. He kicked at the snow and talked about a goal he almost made at practice. I listened. That was the win. The courthouse smelled like old paper and floor cleaner, the kind of smell that settles into your clothes whether you want it to or not. Lynn County Courthouse had been standing longer than any of us in that room, and it felt like it knew how these stories usually ended. I sat on the hard wooden bench with my hands folded, feeling every one of my 56 years in my knees. Janice Keller sat beside me, calm as a lake before dawn. Across the aisle, Linda sat straight-backed, coat-buttoned, hair neat. If you didn't know her, you'd think she was waiting for a routine appointment. Derek Malloy slouched a few seats down, jaw-tight, eyes darting. He looked smaller here. Not the confident man from the rental by the river. Just another middle-aged guy who thought he'd been smarter than the truth. When our case was called, the room quieted. Not dramatically, just enough that you could hear the shuffling of papers, the soft cough of an older woman in the back row. Linda tried one last time. It isn't what it looks like, she said, voice steady, eyes on the judge. Mark misunderstood. I never meant to hurt anyone. The judge looked over her glasses. Mrs. Holloway, you've already stated that there is no other child involved. Yes, Linda said, too quickly. Janice stood. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Your Honor, she said with permission, I'd like to submit documentation that clarifies that statement. The folder hit the desk with a dull final sound. Statements from the credit union, school records, pediatric bills, photographs dated and time-stamped. One clear image of Linda holding Noah's hand outside the rental near the river, his scar visible, unmistakable. Linda's breath hitched. Derek stared at the floor. The judge took his time. He always did. Mrs. Holloway, he said finally, is this your child? Linda's mouth opened, closed, opened again. No, she whispered. Is he your responsibility? Silence. Derek shifted. Janice didn't look at him. She didn't have to. Mr. Malloy, the judge said, you'll answer. Derek cleared his throat. He's my son. And Mrs. Holloway has been financially supporting him, the judge asked. Yes, Derek said, partially. Linda turned toward me, then eyes wide, desperate. Mark, I was going to tell you. I met her gaze. My voice didn't shake. You had years. That was it. No grand speech, no raised voices, just the truth spoken at the right time. The rulings came down clean and clear. Custody protections for Ethan. Financial accountability spelled out in black and white. Conditions, boundaries, consequences. Linda didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just sat there staring at her hands like they belonged to someone else. When it was over, Derek left without looking back. Linda lingered. I never meant for this to hurt you, she said quietly. I know, I said. You just meant for it not to catch up with you. Outside, the sky was a pale winter blue, the kind that promises nothing but honesty. I stood on the courthouse steps and breathed it in. That evening, I took Ethan down by the river trail. The snow had been cleared, but patches of ice still glittered in the shade. He talked about school, about hockey, about nothing that mattered, and everything that did. Dad, he said suddenly, are you okay? I thought about the house, the locks I checked twice, the nightlight shaped like a hockey puck, the quiet justice that doesn't make headlines. I am now, I said. He nodded satisfied and skipped ahead, leaving small boot prints in the snow. Later, when the house was quiet again, I stood in the hallway and looked at his closed bedroom door. Same door, same soft light spilling from underneath. Some people think revenge has to be loud to count. It doesn't. Sometimes it's just the truth documented, carefully delivered calmly, and allowed to do its work. If this story made you think about the quiet moments in your own life, the ones where something didn't feel right and you listened anyway, take a second to reflect on that. And if you believe stories like this matter, stories about truth-finding, daylight, consider sharing this one or subscribing for more. Because justice doesn't always shout. Sometimes it simply stands.